Welcome to another episode of Manny Talks Shooting, the show where I talk to individuals all across the shooting industry. We talk about competition, self-defense, and concealed carry. If you enjoy this content, check out our YouTube channel, Manny Thinks. Without further ado, let me introduce you to our guest. Today, I am sitting down with Mr. Billy Barton from Spectrain. Billy, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm great, man. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to jump in here.
I am glad to have you on. We've been talking about this for a while. We were supposed to record last week, but life happens, I guess. So,
It does. It does. Absolutely.
but how I first came across you was a mutual friend of ours was Brennan.
Okay.
I botch his last name, so I don't try. But Brennan, I've been following him for a while, and he kind of pushed me to say, you should really talk to Billy. I'm like, all right, I'll go talk to Billy. So here we are now.
Very cool. Yeah, Brennan's a great guy. I've been working with him now for I don't know, maybe a year. Kind of ran him. He lives in my local area and ran him at some matches and so forth. And he took one of my classes, and I've actually brought him on now as an assistant instructor at Spectrain. So he helps us out some with those classes. Super good guy. If you guys are looking for lots of good dry fire content and that kind of thing, look up. He goes by Looking Asian on Instagram, and but yeah, super cool guy.
Yes, Brennan is a nice. He and I do have good conversations from time to time. But
Cool.
Mr. Billy, I know kind of who you are. Will you tell
Okay.
the listeners who you are and how did you get into shooting?
Yeah. So, I feel like some of your other guys. I'm like, do you want the 5-minute version or the 30-minute version here? So I guess try to keep it to the interesting stuff. So I am really nobody special. If you know me, it's probably because I run a training company called Spectrain here out of the Charlotte, North Carolina area, but we do travel around and host classes across the country as well. That is not just me. I've got about 10 guys that work for me there that all specialize in different things. I'm kind of the competition performance shooting guy, but I've got guys from all different branches of the military and law enforcement, and that kind of stuff that specialize in some of that stuff as well. Precision rifle shooting, concealed carry, all that kind of stuff. We kind of get into a little bit of everything there with Spectrain. So, besides that, I'm just a guy that really loves to shoot. GM and Carry Optics and USPSA, and so that's been keeping me busy and been a main kind of passion of mine over the past couple of years. Been shooting for a really long time. My dad kind of got me into shooting when I was like 5 years old or something, and so started shooting at a very early age. Or something I just fell in love with. This might be actually kind of an interesting story for those of you out there that are maybe trying to figure out how to get your kids into shooting or whatever. I remember the first couple times that my dad took me to the range. I was shooting like it looked like a cowboy gun. It was a Remington lever action 22 rifle, but it wasn't really like a lever action like you would think of it. It was like you open the lever and that opens the breech, and then you have to manually feed in the one single shot 22 cartridge and close the breech, and then you have to cock the hammer. And it was to this day the heaviest hammer I've ever seen on any gun. Like as a kid, I'm like mashing both thumbs like with all my weight trying to get this hammer back, and we would line up 20 yards or whatever it was from this big black bullseye, and we would just kind of blast away at targets, and like the whole time you have no idea if you're hitting it or not, or like am I doing good or not, but you're just like enjoying turning money into noise, I guess. And eventually you go down and look at your target and you're like, oh well, maybe I hit it sometimes and definitely didn't hit it a lot of the times, and no idea it was right or wrong, and like that was fun. But then what I really remember as a pivotal moment, one of my mom's uncles took me shooting for the first time, set me up like on a bench rest with another Remington 22. This was a 17 round tube fed semi-automatic rifle with a scope on it that was actually zeroed. And so even as a kid that wasn't like particularly skilled or anything, it immediately went from like, okay, I'm just like blasting and having no idea what I'm doing, to like, let's see how quickly I can cut this can in half, or can I like draw a perfect like smiley face with my shots and that kind of stuff. Right. And I was like, wow, okay, this is actually pretty cool. Actually love this, and was just been kind of obsessed with guns ever since. So if you're looking to get kids into shooting, like make it easy on them when they're starting out. Don't be that guy that's like, oh, well, I learned on iron sights, so you're going to do the same thing. Like, don't do that. Make it easy on them. But anyway, got into shooting pretty heavy. Got into kind of defensive stuff early on. Wanted to conceal carry as soon as I could. Bought my first handgun when I was like 18, and started training with that, taking classes, that kind of stuff. and just kind of fell in love with shooting. Ended up getting into instructing a little bit just because there was at that time nobody in my area that was doing anything quality. The first class I ever took, I literally drove like, I think 5.5 hours across the state to find a decent instructor. And I came back and I was like, man, there's nobody in my area that's doing this kind of stuff. And so I started teaching friends and so forth, and just kind of went from there. On the instructing side of the house, got into competition pretty late in my shooting career. So I'd been shooting for 20 years by the time I started getting into competition. So I shot kind of 2 exploratory matches, I like to say, in 2018. Just kind of figured out I didn't even have like a legal gear set up. I was shooting like a polymer 80 gun that I'd kind of like cobbled together, which is a great gun. I loved it, but it wasn't really for USPSA. And so ended up taking like a year off, came back in July of 2019, and just kind of went gangbusters. I was already a pretty good shooter, so learning the game was a lot easier. Made master class in less than 6 months, January of 2020, and then COVID hit, so that kind of slammed the brakes on some stuff there for a while. But I'm actually like pretty much a brand new GM. I say I'm a GM, but it's a pretty new thing. I just made GM off of my scores at Area 6 this last time around. So yeah, that's kind of the journey in short form.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, yeah. I mean, it takes big courage to actually go out and take instruction and drive that kind of distance to go take a class. I know when I started, I probably wouldn't have drove 5 hours for a class, but that's kind of changed now. But and then you made GM. You had decent. You max bumped, I'm assuming, from what, Area 6 you said?
So it wasn't technically a match bump. It was just that score, it's a major match score got uploaded, okay, as a classifier score, and that's what bumped it up. So it wasn't officially a match bump, but
gotcha. But you can still burn it down on the classification system. So
yeah.
Which I found is not the end all be all in our sport, but it definitely is a good representation of shooting skill.
It's funny. So, when I first started, it was super irritating to me because I felt like I was outperforming in matches, what my classification was. And I was one of those guys like, man, this classification system is just some crap. It doesn't represent match skill, so on and so forth. And then you start paying attention and you look at your average match scores, at area matches or section matches or whatever. And you look at it and you're like, okay, GM, 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 MM, GM, MMM, GM, A, M, M. And it's like, why is everybody in order if this classification system doesn't actually work, right? And I'm not saying the classification system is perfect. It's definitely not. We can improve some stuff. I love the new classifiers. I think it's a massive improvement. But it is interesting how generally your classification is a pretty good representation of how you do at matches. For the most part, it works pretty well. And I think what it is, your classification is a pretty good indicator of simply how much effort you've put into the sport, right? I mean, to be M class, to be GM, or to get A class for that matter, like you've got to get out there, you got to shoot a lot of matches, you've got to put the work in, and you've got to actually try to get good at the things that matter in this sport and the things that matter in the classification system. And generally in shooting, if you want to be good and you are putting the work in a smart way, like you will be good. That's, there's very few barriers to entry there. You don't need to be some extreme athlete. You don't have to have some insane natural talent to be good at this sport. You just got to put the work in for the most part. And so it is interesting how the classification system seems to do a pretty decent job of gauging that stuff. But yeah, it's definitely still imperfect for sure.
I mean, I was listening to a couple of their podcasts about their ideas of getting rid of how they could improve the classification system, which were pretty interesting, which I thought. But yeah, I would agree. It definitely shows when you go to a major match and you're like, oh, I performed okay. I performed near my percentage of classification. So, but that is it's a good check mark. And sometimes you have a good match, a bad match, or a fantastic match where everything goes your way for some odd reason, but those usually don't line up.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
So Billy, You want to share who you've taken maybe some training from?
Yeah. So um, I've taken basically all the classes. I would have to count. I know I've taken 20 or 25 courses at this point and then have more on the books. I'm kind of a training junkie. Part of that is because I do really want to get better even still. And I'm always doing all the things that I can to try to reach my goals. But it's also because as an instructor, I think you have to do that. I think if you want to be a good instructor, even if you are a good shooter, you should be a student first. You should still be getting out there and seeing, okay, what are other people doing in their classes? How are they running that? And so a lot of the classes that I've taken are simply that. It's to be a better instructor, even more than a better shooter. You know, I mean, in recent years, I've taken probably 4 or 5 Pistol 1 courses, right? I didn't go to those because I wanted to necessarily learn the stuff that was being taught in the course, but I wanted to see, hey, is there a way that I can make my courses better? So I've taken all the courses. A lot of really good ones. I've trained with, JJ Rakaza and Ben Steger and some of those guys that are obviously at the top of the game and put on some really phenomenal classes and learned a lot from those guys. Scott Jidlinski, I've taken a couple from him as well. He's a great instructor. In the tactical space, some others, John Lovell, Warrior Poet Society, John Murphy, FPF training. Lot of good guys out there. Definitely taken some pretty crappy classes as well that I'll skip over. But yeah, training, it's huge. I do think I'm coming across a lot of folks lately that are kind of training junkies in a way that I almost think it isn't beneficial, in the sense that, if you're taking 4 classes a year as a new shooter, as an example, like, do you really have time? Are you putting in the range time between those courses to actually like put into practice the things you're learning from those courses? Or is all your work coming from the courses, right? And I, to be honest, I have students that are the same way in my courses that show up to like every single class I put on, and they're like the same person at every single class that I put on, because the work isn't being put in. So when I started, at just looking to become a better shooter, I was putting on like 1 class a year in my training regimen, and that was giving me enough homework to do work for the next 6 to 12 months and not run out of stuff to do, and not really like stop getting better every range class. And then I would kind of feel like I kind of mastered some of the things I learned from that course, and be like, okay, time for a new one. Let's go find the next level. So I think that's kind of probably the best way to really approach it. But so class is absolutely beneficial, but no substitute for putting the work in. And I'd say as well, as folks get better, in their skill set, classes can kind of become discouraging, because all of a sudden you get to a point where you're like the best shooter in most of the classes you go to. And like in some cases, depending on what circle or world you're training in, maybe you're better than some of the instructors that you end up going to. And so, I got in that space for a while, in the defensive world, if you will, the tactical world, where it's like, okay, pretty much any class I go to, like, the instructor is just going to ignore me the whole time I'm there. Like, he's literally not going to say a word to me the entire time I'm in the class, because he doesn't have anything for me, to be like totally honest. Right. And then you go to, a JJ Rakaza class or a Ben Steger class, and you're like, oh, okay, this guy has a whole lot of stuff for me, because he actually is better than me. Right. So, yeah, picking who you're going to is super important as well.
Yeah, and I agree with you on the taking not so many classes in a year. I've met some of those people who are the junkies, who are the, like you said, once a quarter. Oh, I'm going to a class.
Yep.
I myself am about a one class a year student as well. It makes
Cool.
it. I mean, I've got all that time to download that and learn and refine everything I've learned. I don't know about you, but myself, I take a metric crap ton of notes at a
Yep.
class, which is really hard because you get in the moment, but then you're also like, I need to write this down. So it's kind of one of those things of finding that balance for me to take those notes. But I come away
Yeah,
with pages of notes.
it's actually something I tell folks at the beginning of every one of my classes. I'm like, look, the first class I ever took, man, it was one of those things where I remember very clearly the feeling at the end of the day of like, oh yeah, I learned this and that and this, and I need to do that drill, and I want to work on that some more. And then it's like you go to bed and you wake up the next morning and you're like, wait, what was all that stuff that I had that I wanted to work on, right? Like maybe that's just me, but I'm like, man, from now on, I started the thing for a long time, taking a lot of notes, and nowadays, to be completely honest with you, like I basically video every class I go to, like every block of instruction I have on video, and I take pictures of the drills, and I do it that way, and I go back and watch it later. But so, yeah, some way to capture all that information is crucial for sure.
Now, speaking of videoing classes, what have you found to be the best way to stay engaged with the class yet still properly video it?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. So a lot of instructors, may have different feelings on you videoing their courses as well. So I don't go into like I'm going to make this some kind of professional production or anything like that. As long as I basically capture what they're saying, that's all I kind of care about. And specifically, more often it's the audio, even more than the video. So I'll just kind of at the beginning of a block of instruction, hit the camera button on my phone, hit record, and I kind of just put my wrist below belt, tight position with my camera pointing roughly in their direction. And I don't look at my phone. I don't look at my camera while I'm recording. It's just something to have as a backup. And then I'm looking at the instructor and very engaged what they're saying the whole time. And then when they're done, it's time to shoot. I put my phone back in my pocket. I'm kind of done. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Because I have met some shooters in classes who've taken video, but they're very much more behind the phone. And they're they're more there for the like the check mark instead of the learning.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, hey, if that works for them, great. If they're getting a lot of learning, off of the videos that they're capturing and so forth, I guess more power to them. But yeah, for me, I definitely try to focus, pretty hard on what's going on in the moment as well.
Absolutely. Now, it's kind of cool. I knew you took a JJ. I didn't know you took a Ben class. So that's another. But
very, very different guys too, right? So like one of the things you'll notice is like one of the sayings I say in my courses, like from my experience shooting and training with a lot of the best shooters and instructors in the world, I say if you get the best 10 shooters in the world in a room together and ask them all how to grip a handgun, the only thing they're all going to agree on is that the 11th guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Right. Like, and that's a bit of an exaggeration. Like there's going to be universal principles, get high on the gun and stuff like that, but they're all going to tell you something different. Right. And so, guys like Ben is very successful, multiple time national champion. Same thing with JJ, massively different shooting styles. Right. Like, you look at Ben, I mean, Ben shot 10 Charlies at Cornhusker Challenge. Like that's just ridiculous. Right. Generally, when you look at the scores by the top guys at nationals and area matches, like that's not what you're seeing. You're seeing like 30 Charlies and 4 Deltas and 2 Mikes, right? And so like there's more than one way to be successful at this sport. I mean, Jason Bradley was also shooting minor, but he was shooting Carry Optics. I think he beat Ben by like less than 1% at Cornhusker, but he beat him by like his time was like on average over a second faster than Ben on every single stage. Like you would think that would be just like a murder, right? But they ended up like within 1%. So you can learn a lot from these different kind of guys. When I go to Ben's class, I learn a whole lot about marksmanship stuff. Like straight up. That's what I learned from Ben. When I go to JJ, I learned about movement. I learned about transitions. I learned about some of that kind of stuff. So you can learn, there's things you can learn from all these guys that, specialize in different things and so forth. But anyway.
And even on the we'll call it tactical side. I mean, level Jedi, John Murphy, those are top level instructors I agree with. And they're always
that all specialize in different things. Like I was saying, right? I mean, Jedi, is probably one of the best guys out there right now for like, appendix and waistband stuff. Like if you want to learn that, like that's his niche, right? Guys like John Lovell, like if you want to learn about how to use cover and like, some of that tactics based stuff, probably one of the best stuff out there. If you want to learn about, social interactions and pre-threat indicators and that kind of stuff, you can go learn from John Murphy, and he will talk until you're blue in the face about that stuff, right? So all these guys have different specialties, and you can learn, different things from just about everybody for sure.
Right. It's definitely definitely, I would agree, to have a wide spectrum of training classes under your belt, not just shooting classes or competition oriented classes and whatnot. I know we'll talk a little bit more about your curriculum here in a little bit, but
sure.
I kind of want to get the gear queers out of the way.
Okay.
Let's go over your gun a little bit for them today.
So let me So this is my match / carry gun. This is the Zev OZ9 competition. I have been shooting Zev parts for a very, very long time before the OZ9 existed. I do have a partnership with Zev, kind of sponsored by them. Most of my sponsors don't give a crap about the fact that I'm a competitive shooter. They like me because I'm an instructor and I have a training company. Full disclosure. So it's a little bit different when I say sponsors, but yeah, I absolutely love this gun. So a lot of people think I have videos about it. I won't dive in too much. This is not just a Glock for folks that don't know about it. It is a really cool system. It's got a full length steel chassis in the bottom of it. So the frame on an OZ9 is roughly double the weight of your normal Glock frame from the non-scientific, weights that I've taken. And a lot of the weight that you're adding is up front with this big steel rail in the front, which is pretty cool. Changes the balance of it. Great feel, a little bit different grip angle on there. This slide in particular is my favorite one they've ever done. This is the KC Eusebio edition. Great slide cuts that are super grippy, lighten the slides, it tracks really well. Everything about this gun I pretty much am in love with. There's a lot of great guns out there on the market, but as far as the gun goes, that is what I'm running. I run the Safariland ELS belt system, nothing too crazy there. I like this because as somebody who does shoot multiple disciplines, if I have, rifle mag pouches I can swap out really super easy on the Safariland system, like those a lot. These are definitely mag pouches that you're not going to see in competition too often. But I do like them a whole lot. These are the T-Rex Arms Mars pouches. A lot of the competition-based pouches, I feel like, they're mostly magnet-based, so they're primarily designed for metal mags. So if you're a Glock guy, it's not the best. But also they have really, really tight kind of openings up top. So most of the time that's fine. But when you get on that stage where it's like, I got to pick all these mags up off the top of this barrel and shove them in my pouches, like a lot of guys struggle with that a lot. Tactical based pouches, right? We're used to doing tactical reloads and needing to blind shove mags back into mag pouches. And so these guys have kind of a funnel up top. And they're fully angle adjustable. So I like these pouches a whole lot. They work really well for me. I've got, this is a new tier 1 concealed holster, actually. So again, not a competition holster, but I really like this one. I switched over. I was using the Red Hill Tactical before, which a lot of people are probably familiar with. I like this one a little bit better. I like the retention style of it. I like the way they have scalped all the material off the back here. That's super important for me. It doesn't have a super low cut in the front. I didn't know if I was going to like that or not. Obviously all the competition holsters usually have that low cut so you can scoop it out of there as quickly as possible. I've seen absolutely no change in my draw times whatsoever, but I do feel like the retention here is a lot better. So whenever I do need to run around a range with my gun still in my holster, I don't feel like I have to hold on to it all the time. It stays in there a lot better without slowing me down at all. So that's pretty much the belt setup. Nothing too crazy. So yeah.
I see you running a ratchet on the back of that, which is very smart. I also run a ratchet.
Yeah, I love these a lot. I couldn't even tell you where I got it. I don't even think it's necessarily designed for this. You can just Google like belt ratchets, find all kind of stuff, but definitely is a great way. That's my number one problem. If you get a Safariland ELS belt, the closure system on it is terrible. It is a real pain to lock that thing in place, especially if you have it behind, which I like. That's one thing people ask me about the belt is why do you have it in behind as far as in front? I like the distance between my holster and my mag pouch to stay the same at all times. So in other words, if I throw on, let's say, a jacket or whatever, and it's in the winter, or I'm wearing on base layers or whatever, my belt size may have to change a little bit, but I don't want, because of that, my gun and my mags to get like different distances apart and be changing their position. I like them to stay in the same place all the time, and that's why I have that in the back. But this is super easy to find, and then it adjusts really well. If you do need to kind of micro adjust that stuff. So yeah, I love the ratchet systems for sure.
And I find that like even on like a double alpha belt, like the eventually the Velcro will give out on you, and the ratchet just, even if your Velcro is dead, the ratchet will hold it around your waist. And it's just a super secure mounting system. I don't think they're a lot of money, guys, so you can go out and find them pretty cheaply and easily and modify your belt if you choose.
Yeah, 100%.
But Now I see you are running there's a light on your carry gun, but there's not a light bearing holster on your setup. Is there a reason why you stuck away
Correct.
from not going on to the light? As everyone was thinking, everyone's going to get a light on their gun now.
Yeah. So obviously for carry purposes, lights are super beneficial. So I've always been running a light, for concealed carry, that kind of stuff. I have not switched to it yet on my carry gear. I may at some point. I just don't think it's that big of a deal. I think some folks get into a frenzy about making their guns as heavy as possible. And I get that. Weight's nice. It definitely helps soak up recoil. But in my mind, if I'm already doing like 12 and 13 splits, like in the A zone at 7 yards, like how much more recoil control do I need exactly? So it's like, I think the technique is far more important than gear in that sense. Also, generally, when you have a light bearing holster on your belt, it does change up. I was trying to think if I don't know where my other holster is. It changed up my draw a little bit because there's more material down below the light. So in other words, where I was pointing out on this holster, below the trigger guard, it's just a straight line down. So when I actually do my draw, my fingers kind of ride up below there and come out with the holster. Most of your light bearing holsters, because the light's here, it bumps the screws out here and changes the geometry of this holster, the way you can kind of approach it. So it also changes usually the friction on your gun as well, because with your trigger guard friction with a non-light bearing holster, it's usually just a very subtle kind of click out, and then there's no friction at all there as it comes the rest of the way. With a light bearing holster, usually it's more just like a friction on the light body itself, and so it kind of is dragging the whole way out of the holster. So generally the draw is not quite as nice. So there's pros and cons to both. I don't think, I'm not saying don't run a light on your holster for competition. If that's what you've got and you like it, cool. But with the various pros and cons, I definitely haven't seen a particular reason why I felt like I needed to change it. To be honest, with the weight that my gun is already, when I add a light on there, as far as recoil goes, I don't notice a massive difference in the way that it behaves. I do notice a bit of a difference with transitions. So it requires some reprogramming, if you will, for those super, accurate and aggressive transitions, because the weight's different. And I know Juan Kim made a much more scientific video about it than I have looked into it. One of the things he noticed, he was like, he's like, when I'm shooting two-handed, I don't notice any difference in the way it behaves with the light on it. When I shoot one-handed, he did notice a little bit more of a difference there. So, like I said, different pros and cons. Don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. I just haven't been motivated enough to try to get a new holster and all that stuff yet.
Yeah, I am very much I don't want a light. I'm too lazy to change my holster. Although I'm changing my holster to a different brand.
Okay.
Because I've had issues with my Red Hill Tactical. I don't like to have to hold my gun when I run around a bay to go get pacers, or I'm ROing somebody. I'm like, I don't want to hold my gun. So I'm switching holsters here soon. As soon as I get it, it's one of lead times. So, but yeah,
there's different thoughts on that. Some folks really, really like the big, thick Kydex or the double layer Kydex holsters. And nothing wrong with them. It's just, you got to know there's less flexibility there. So it's either going to be, super loose where you can yank it out of there, no problem, or it's going to be tighter and it's not going to give as easily, when you want to draw it. So there actually is, in my opinion, definitely some advantages to having the thinner single layer Kydex holsters. They're going to just form a little bit better, fit your gun a little bit better, to where, it takes decent initial pressure to pop it through that first little bit of retention. And then it's just nice and easy, quick out of there. So this is a new one with Tier 1 Concealed. I actually talked to, met with Jared up at Ohio Range Day when he was first developing this holster, and gave him some ideas and feedback, kind of what I look for in a good holster when this is kind of in the prototype phase. And I got this one a little bit early to play around with it before they were actually released. And I've really, really enjoyed it so far.
And it definitely speaks to the quality of a holster maker when you not all holsters are made equal.
Yep.
So everyone do your research, get informed on your holsters. Not cheaper 100%. Is not always better.
Yes, that's almost never the case.
Mm-hmm.
You really certainly in every industry there are those products which have good value, or maybe are charging just for a particular aesthetic or whatever. There's not really value behind it, but for the most part, like, you really are getting what you pay for a
Right.
lot of times. Yeah.
Exactly. Like I kind of say like when I talk about when people ask me, should I get this X brand light? Well, I'm like, you could get this. Well, it's like they ask me, should I get this O light? I'm like, no, go buy a
No.
stream light. Go buy a stream light. It's a great value light, even though it's not like an X300. It's as durable as all get out. It'll last forever. It's 1,000 lumens. Go buy that.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. People ask me that all the time. Like, no, yes, I do run mod lights because like I do this for a living and I want like the good stuff, right? But like, no, you don't necessarily need to go buy a $300 flashlight. Like you can go buy, like you said, Streamlight's a great example where you can buy an $80 weapon mounted light kit,
Mm-hmm.
and be like, have a really pretty decent performing package there for the most part. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I actually have a stream light on my rifle, but I got the Cloud Defensive, the shoe holder, essentially what it holds the
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. I've got
It
one on that
escapes
rifle up there, but
it escapes my name, whatever they call that now. But yes, I don't. I like gear, but I like stuff that works, but I take other people's opinions first before I buy something though too. So
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
it definitely makes it a little bit easier to bite the wallet at that point instead of I've never heard of anyone using this, so I'm gonna buy it.
Yeah. It's funny, one of the things that I run into quite a lot is those guys that are like, I don't want to buy a Glock because everyone already has that. I'm like, that's, I get it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to make fun of those guys, but like, man, that's some bad logic.
Mm-hmm.
Buying something no one else has is probably not the best idea when it comes to either life-saving equipment or like anything you take seriously, like in competition. Like, is some of the tactical guys make fun of competition gear as if we don't care about our gear, and I'm like, man, you know yeah, we do. We invest a whole lot into this sport, and like the last match I shot, I won by 0.02%. Like, every little thing does actually matter in this sport, so we pay a lot of attention and we want our stuff to work well there too. But yeah, so if something is super popular, especially among people that actually shoot a lot and kind of know what they're talking about, like, it's probably for a pretty good reason.
Mm-hmm.
Reason.
Now, just as an odd little side question, I know in my area the Glock is kind of prevalent in carry optics still.
Okay.
Have you seen a lot of shooters leave like the plastic form, the plastic pistols to go to like the Shadows, the Shadow
Oh yeah.
2s, and the maybe even the Legion?
Oh yeah. Um, yeah, the Glock is kind of the gun of the tactical Timmy in my neck of the woods, if you will. Like, it's a lot of folks that are new to the sport. And in my area, most of the sport folks that are like USPSA shooters first are running the guns you're talking about: the Shadow 2s, 10 Focal, the stock 2s, some Legions and some SIG stuff as well. A lot of those kind of guns. And that's totally fine. I mean, there's a ton of good guns that are out there. And I don't think anybody's wrong for running any one of those guns. I would happily run any one of those guns. So I stick with, and obviously I'm not running a Glock, I'm running an OZ9, but it does share some similarities. Some things that I think this gun has right now that are a little bit different than a lot of the other guns that are out there on the market. Obviously, I think bore axis is a thing. Like, I know some folks are like, that's not what it's all about. I'm like, no, it's not what it's all about. And obviously technique is a thing, but like, I absolutely notice a difference when I shoot a SIG, as an example, to when I shoot a Glock or an OZ9, where the bore is just much closer into my hands. The I guess the return, some folks will make the argument the return time is the same. So as an example, let's say I shoot the gun and my Glock only jumps, a little bit and comes back, and the SIG jumps a lot and comes back. But if they both arrive back on target at the same time, like, does it really matter? Is the question some of those guys will ask. And I think it does, simply because when you're shooting predictively, it's much easier to track the dot if it's not moving as much, or to see it coming. So yeah, I do think it matters. Anyway, I like Glocks and OZ9s because of the lower bore axis right now, especially now that this Timney trigger has come out. I mean, the advantage you're getting, in my opinion, some people will think this is nuts, but the advantage you're getting from a stock 2 trigger, a shadow 2 trigger, like, is just marginal, if there's any at all, especially when you consider the difficulty of the first, double action trigger pull. I personally love just having a consistent, 2.5-pound trigger, roughly, that has a nice clear wall, and I love this trigger at this point. Additionally, there's other things you're going to get, from the Glock kind of OZ9 world, cheap magazines and all that kind of stuff, that you just have to, pay kind of out the wazoo for if you're running, one of the other platforms a lot of times. So anyway, yeah, I don't fault. I think there's a lot of good guns out there from a lot of good manufacturers right now. The PDP, there's some guys running that in my area now. The new Walther stuff, as well as the old Q5. But yeah, there's a lot of good guns up there right now, for sure.
I will say the Timney is pretty baller. I have one
Yeah.
in a Gen 5, and it is quite fantastic to have that sub 3-pound trigger on a Glock.
Yeah.
I've only had one issue with it, but I'll tell you that offline, so we can
Okay.
But it's not a major issue. It's just a really weird issue. But anyway, I like the Timney so far. We'll see how it does in a match.
Very cool. Yeah, I have no affiliation with Timney at all. I got to try one a little bit earlier. There's a shooter in my area, Matt Martini, who was working with Timney a little bit on the prototyping phase. He let me shoot his early, before it was even announced yet, and I was like, yeah, I'm getting one of these as soon as it comes out, for sure. I've only played the Gen 3 version as well. I know some guys, randomly, I'm hearing more reports of issues, it sounds like, from the Gen 5. I'm not sure if that one's necessarily 100% as good to go as Gen 3. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about it later. But so far, the Gen 3 specifically has been really phenomenal. I've enjoyed it a lot.
I will say it's definitely I would say is almost as long as they run well, a needed upgrade in a Glock if you're going to compete with it at a high level, because it's just that much better than I think any other aftermarket $150 trigger that's out there. I mean, you've put a video up on it, so if anyone, I'm going to leave a link to that video,
okay,
in the description of this, guy, so you can go watch Billy and listen to him talk about it in more detail of how the trigger system works and all that good stuff.
Yeah, the Timney, just real quick highlight for those that don't know, completely changes the mechanics of how a Glock trigger works. It makes it much more similar to, like, the way, as an example, an M&P trigger works with the sear system. So if you ever shot like an Apex trigger on a M&P, when you get a Timney trigger and a Glock, it works very much the same way, and is in that way drastically different from any other trigger that is on the market for Glock. So I think it is going to be the new gold standard for Glock triggers, hands down.
Yes, I can agree. Billy, so do you have any current, now that you've made GM, I'm assuming it's not, I'm assuming that wasn't your end all be all goal for competitive shooting and shooting in general. What are some of your current goals for yourself and then maybe for the business?
Absolutely. So, yeah, 100% correct. Not the end all be all whatsoever. In my mind, GM's kind of a cool thing. But what I care about way more than hitting that is more match performance type stuff. So, I'm still very, very new to major matches. Like I said, I only really started taking USPSA seriously in 2019. I shot, my first major match ever was the SC section in 2020, I think. And I ended up getting DQ'd right off the bat, in my opinion, and everyone else's opinion on my squad, a really bad RO call. Yeah, so didn't even get to really shoot that one. I went and shot Georgia state match after that, and I learned a lot about major matches at Georgia section, for sure. I treated that match very, very casually. I tried to drive down there with like almost no sleep, and it's like a 4-hour drive. I think I tried to drive down there and shoot it the same day and drive back. And I ended up getting there like 3 or 4 hours before I was ready to shoot. And for whatever reason, there was like almost no one shooting at the time that I showed up. And so we had like free reign, me and one of my buddies, of all the stages. And so I ended up doing like 20, 10 or 15, full speed walkthroughs on like all 15 stages or whatever. And I ended up like, by the time it was ready to shoot, like the first stage rolls around, I'm like wore out. Like already, had some personal stuff going on. One of my buddies I just found out the morning of the match when my buddies had gotten injured and so forth. And I was like kind of worked up about that. Did really, really bad at that match, like even for the level that I was at that time. And so definitely took some lessons away from that. Had much better time at the majors that I shot this year. I shot area 6 as still as master class. Obviously, I think I was 9th or something in Carry Optics. 9th at area 6. So I felt like that was pretty representative of my skill there, pretty much towards the high end of the M class pack there. I was pretty psyched about that. Went to SC section, which was like a month later, and got 5th there in my first match as a GM. So was not super disappointed there either. And both of those matches felt like I left a lot on the table though. So really just improving that. Right now I'm aiming for NC section hardcore, which is in right about a month from now. Got my full training plan mapped out for that, and I'm taking that one pretty seriously. So getting to a place where I'm winning those or in contention for those kind of matches is definitely, like, I think, goal number 1 for right now. And then keep moving up for nationals and that kind of stuff is definitely on the horizon for sure.
Mm-hmm. So you're gonna beat my buddy Jay Beal at North Carolina?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
We'll
see.
Jay here.
We'll see.
Jay, he's coming for you. Jay listens to the podcast quite regularly, so
yeah, Jay is a beast.
Mm-hmm.
Jay's a beast for sure.
Yeah. It'll be nice. He'll be down there. I think his brother's going to. Nick is a serious shooter too, which is intense. I haven't talked or met with Nick, but what from Jay says, he is Jay 0.75 probably, well 0.9, 90% of Jay, but Nick's really good too. So
yeah.
But so what are some kind of goals for Spectrain in like the next year or two? Or like trying to grow the business even more, travel a little bit maybe?
Yeah, so the training world is interesting right now. There's some of our classes we've never really lost a man for. Some of them, like, we do precision rifle classes, and 6.5 Creedmoor is still $2 a round right now. And it's like, for a 400 round course, we precision rifle is lower round counts, but it's like, man, who's dropping $800 on ammo to come to a course? Like, nobody, right? For the most part. So we're still kind of crawling along, still doing courses for sure. We actually ran into, because of the way that our company's built and the way that we do classes very differently from, as far as I'm aware, anybody else that does training in the country. We have a very high instructor to student ratio. Usually for our core classes, we do like 3 students to every 1 instructor. And you're pretty much shooting one-on-one with an instructor throughout the whole day. So it requires a bunch of our guys to be there. It's not a model that is built to make money. We really don't offer these courses, but it is a model that I think has enabled us to pass on a whole lot of value to our students. We have, to our core pistol classes, like brand new shooters show up regularly that have literally never shot a gun. And then we have kind of our what we call our core drill at the end of the day, which is kind of a run and gun USPSA almost style stage, where you're running to different positions and shooting different targets and so forth, up and down range. And so far, every single student we've ever had has been able to do that and be able to do so competently. So we're accelerating people through a really rapid growth phase for those beginner courses, just because they're, again, one-on-one for the most part with instructors throughout the day. So that's been pretty cool for us. But yeah, so looking, hopefully, I'm seeing encouraging signs in the ammo market. It's not going to be back to 2018 style anytime soon, but hopefully getting back to some more normalcy, and we can just kind of stomp on the gas starting 2022, maybe early in the year, and be able to pick up on kind of where we left off with some of those training opportunities and start getting around more. I have started here just in the last year teaching more USPSA specific style, competition style stuff as well. So definitely going to be going on the road with that, getting around to some more places with that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, if anybody listening has a range and interested group of folks, definitely hit us up. We'll definitely make a trip down to your neck of the woods for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And typically what you'll have a minimum of like 8 students maybe for a class, or what, 12 is your minimum?
It depends on the course. For my competition style courses, I like to keep it really small. 6 to 8 usually. Usually I run that one by myself, and I like to keep it small because we do a lot of stage runs over the course of that course. It's not the most that we do, a lot of like drills and actual like learning stuff as well, but then we kind of try to apply it on the stage. And so when you only have one person shooting at a time on a stage, as you know, it slows things down. So I like to keep those pretty small. Generally our normal courses, like our core courses, are like 14, 15 folks in those. So yeah, it just kind of depends on the course.
Gotcha. That's pretty cool. I'm looking a little bit at your website. It's very, I like your website. Can you kind of explain what the 3 words in your kind of the logo mean?
Yeah. So I did not start Spectrain. It was started by my buddy Chris, who was he was a Marine, and then he spent a lot of time on the SWAT team here in Mecklenburg County for Charlotte Metro as a sniper and doing some other kind of stuff. That Fortes Fortuna Juvat was actually the kind of the motto for his SWAT team. So he carried that over. I think it's Fortune favors the bold, something of that nature, basically, is what it translates to. But yeah, so he brought that over as kind of an homage to his SWAT team.
Oh wow! And it says now is he still at Vortex Edge?
He is. Yep, absolutely. I just talked to him last week. They're doing some pretty cool stuff up there at Vortex. Excited to see kind of what that grows into. But yeah, super cool place for sure.
That is very cool. Like I said, your website's very nicely laid out. Surprisingly,
Thanks, man. Yeah,
some websites are not very navigatable.
I've done as I built the website, I've done a little bit of everything in my like day job careers, and done some tech stuff and some IT stuff on the side too. So that definitely helps on the business side of the house with the website and that kind of stuff. So,
but would you say you do what 90% is your core pistol classes or your core carbine class that gets taught all the time, or what's kind of your
so we've got a range of courses kind of on the tactical / defensive side of the house. We've got our core pistol and core rifle, which is our typical level 1 core proficiency type stuff. We level that up to the critical applications, what we call our level 2 courses for core rifle and core pistol, which is essentially where you take, in level 1, you basically learn what we feel like are the core fundamental skills required for anybody who wants to carry a pistol on a daily basis, have a rifle, whether it's duty or for home defense or whatever, and the core mechanics you need to learn to run that for those kind of core proficiencies. When I say fundamentals, I'm not talking about like the NRA list of like breathing and stance. Like I'm talking about things like movement. I'm talking about things like, transitions. I'm talking about the core fundamentals that you need to actually have to be a combat effective marksman. Level 2 is like, okay, how do we actually apply that to like real world variables? So we add in things like use of cover, target identification, injuries, all that kind of cool guy stuff, if you will. So we have those for rifle and for carbine. We've got combined arms as well. We got precision rifle, and then we've got kind of more basic just mechanics courses, as well as the performance / competition side of the house that I kind of run. So we do a little bit of everything. We've done some low light stuff. We've done some vehicle stuff. So we've done just about anything. Like I said, I've got, like I said, right about now, about 10 guys on the cadre, looking at adding some more here pretty quick soon that may have some expertise in things like combatives and survival and some things like that. So we're always adding and kind of tweaking what's on the curriculum list. But yeah, we get into a lot of cool stuff.
That is pretty cool. And are you able to train almost 10 months out of the year? Do you have to take an off season due to the weather in North Carolina, or is it pretty warm still?
Zero off season. Yeah. So typically we train every month of the year. Yeah.
That's pretty good then. Because I know like where I live, we have to take time off or find indoor facilities to train at. So
right. Yeah, they don't. There's, I mean, here there's no off scene for competition scene. I mean, like they have matches generally 12 months of the year, so pretty cool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. Now let's.
If anything, our off season would be like July. Like,
Oh yeah, where it's blazing hot and you're just
yeah,
like,
exactly right. Yeah, yeah.
but that's why you get all the powered battery powered fans like from the hardware department and be like, fans. Have you
They
seen
do.
those?
I have one that I primarily use for cooling my guns off. Like, to be honest, like I have my
Mhm.
match gun and my training gun, but during the like July, August months of the year, like I'll shoot 4 mags through one gun and it sits on the fan, getting cooled off, and I break the other gun out and I'm shooting that one for the next 4, and they kind of trade off because your gun will just literally get so hot you can't hold it.
Yeah.
In that kind of weather. So
I've
yeah.
seen the fans become a big popular thing lately for that. I remember I think it was a long time ago, a video that JJ put out. He puts his gun into like a cooler. Be like, yeah,
Yep.
here you can cool off.
I've done that too. Yeah.
But now we'll kind of I want to get back to a little bit more about you. What is your personal training schedule like? I know you're teaching classes, but and shooting matches, but do you have like a dry fire schedule, a live fire schedule kind of thing?
I do. It's definitely changed up a lot in the last year, as things have been a little bit different. Even with some of my, access to ammo and stuff that some folks may not have. Still definitely a limited consumption there a lot. I generally I do dry fire every single day. That does vary though what that means. So sometimes my dry fire will be 5 minutes, playing with the gun, filling the trigger, doing some draws, that kind of stuff. Other times it's me, out in the backyard with, a full like 12 target stage, running around either with a real gun or with airsoft guns or whatever the case may be, doing some of that kind of stuff, movement drills, that kind of thing. I'm on the range as much as I possibly can be. I do feel like the folks that can do basically exclusively dry fire and grow a lot, over the course of a year, like not shooting their guns, are extremely impressive to me. I'm not sure that I have the motivation to do that. Like if I'm not out shooting, I definitely seem to have less motivation to be dry firing. To me, the cool thing about dry firing is like, all right, here's the things I'm going to work on this week, and then I'm going to see how it worked out, on Saturday on the range. I'm out shooting that kind of stuff. So I definitely shoot a lot. In 2019, I probably shot 25,000 rounds, 9mm, that kind of stuff. So not as much as some guys, but I was definitely, on the range every single week, shooting, a couple thousand rounds a month in combination between range time and classes and matches and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely, if you want to get good quick and you're making big gains, putting in the work is definitely part of it, for sure. So picking things up now, I'm kind of back to once weekly range days, occasionally twice, but those are kind of being held to 150 300 round type sessions right now. I actually just started, and this is pretty cool, I just started with gold membership with Practical Shooting Training Group, which has been pretty cool. I'm enjoying that a lot. It's a good way to get feedback and stuff. I'm to the point right now. I no longer have range buddies and stuff that I go shoot with that are better than me for the most part. So getting good feedback is super helpful and important. So it's been cool. Juan's been giving me lots and lots of good feedback. So good things to work on.
Yeah, I can't. I personally have not joined the PSTG yet. I'm going to whenever I remember to. For some odd reason, I need to put a list on my computer next time I sit down. But yes, Rob. I've talked to Rob Epifania about it a couple times. Mason Lane. They're like, just do it. It's only $25. I mean, you waste that like going and getting like soda or coffee or something a week or something. It's like just go do it. So I'm like, I'm gonna do it. But I think that's one of the
it's one of those things I will say that just for anybody is I think it's 1,000% worth it. Even at, I'm not the best shooter in the world by far, right? But even as a GM, I mean, Juansek beat me by I think 6 spots. When we competed at Area 6, right? So I'm kind of up there. I would say kind of in that same kind of general area. But still, he is giving me video breakdowns that are just extremely helpful. Great breakdowns of what I'm doing and so forth, and a lot of stuff, it may be even stuff that or that I know already, but sometimes it's hard to watch and really pick yourself apart like you can someone else. Right. And so that feedback has actually been super great.
It is. And now, honestly, since you've already been dabbling with gold, would you say that it's worth it even for our tactical friends of the house to do something kind of like that?
So as far as like the gold versus silver, right? I think it just depends on your level of engagement, how much work you're putting in. If you are training every single day, and you're only able to upload one video a month, like, that that's gonna get irritating. The gold's pretty cool. Doing one video a week, I can basically train for a week, put a video together, upload it for feedback, and I feel like that's a good cadence. For the tactical side of the house, again, I think in my mind, you may or may not need it depending on what you're doing. So, the PSTG is insanely helpful if you're having troubles finding things to work on or ways to get better. If you're still like getting better every single time you go to the range, like by a measurable amount, then you may not necessarily be needing to pay a bunch of money for someone else to tell you how to get better, because you're already still able to do that. But if you're running out of stuff to work on, or you're like, man, I think I did that about as well as I can, I have no idea, man, I've been trying to do this drill and break this time for like a month now, and I can't figure out how to do it. If that's the kind of level you're getting to, then getting that kind of feedback is helpful, no matter what side of the house you're coming from. If you'd never plan on shooting a competition, but you want to learn how to be faster and more accurate, like that's what competition guys specialize in, right? That's what competition is all about. And it really doesn't matter whether you're shooting, a Glock from behind a car, or you're shooting a Shadow 2 from behind a vision barrier. Like, it's the same stuff. Shooting is shooting for the most part. So yeah, if you're looking for a way to get good feedback from great shooters, then I think it's invaluable.
Boom. Guys, go to it if you need it. I mean, I'm not a member. I'm not affiliated with the PSTG in any way, but good information is out there, and it doesn't always come from the obvious source either, though. You might get something great from Joe Blow or
100%.
some competition shooter. I mean, that's kind of why competition, like special forces, are calling for competition shooters to come in and teach shooting to their guys, not tactics, but shooting.
Yeah. 100% for sure. It's one of the reasons I got into, as somebody who was primarily from the kind of defensive tactical kind of background, and that's really what motivated me to get into shooting. And it's one of the reasons I got into competition in the beginning. Is, again, I kind of ran out of people that were better than me to shoot with. And actually Scott Jaliski was like, yeah, go shoot a match. You will find people that are better than you are. I was like, okay. Cool. So at the time, it wasn't even because I was convinced, like, hey, I'm going to dive into USPSA with both feet, and I'm going to care about competing at major matches or anything at that level. It was just like, hey, I need to find people that are better than me to shoot with. And so I can watch them. Maybe they'll give me some feedback from time to time. And it turned out to be absolutely invaluable. And also just a great way to have a realistic kind of self-assessment of like, okay, where are my skills actually at? Where are the areas I need to grow in? And so, yeah, that was invaluable in helping me continue to grow at that stage of my shooting, for sure.
I will say that Jedi is the reason I started competing. I started listening to his podcast, and it's like, just go do it. Let's go do it. I mean, which here I am now. And
yep.
Thanks, Scott. But
absolutely.
But now, is there anything you do differently when you're preparing for like a major match?
Yes, there is. So I really like, and I'll butcher this and kind of put my own spin on it as well, but JJ talks about like 3 phases of training. And this is kind of different phases of training that you go through in your shooting career, but it also can be like phases of training that you go through approaching a particular goal, such as a major match. So phase 1 is kind of fundamentals, grip, stance, that kind of stuff, draw. Obviously the first thing you learn as a new shooter, right? Phase 2 is where we're adding in things like movement, like transitions, all the different dynamic stuff that we encounter in our sport. And phase 2 is where we start doing exploration, right? Where we start, exploring speed mode, and figuring out, how do I get better at things? This is where I'm actually, every time I'm going to the range, I am exploring, how do I get better at X thing? Phase 3 is all about consistency of execution. So, JJ would tell you that, like, he hardly ever shoots, like, when we're getting ready for a major match, especially whatever, he'll never shoot like the same drill twice. That's not what it's about. He's when I'm getting ready to go to a major match, I am not trying to figure out, how do I take 1/10 of a second off my draw? I'm not trying to figure out, how do I get faster at transition? That's the wrong time to be changing things up in your game. It becomes more about, okay, what I need to practice is seeing a shooting challenge for the first time, coming up with the best possible plan to solve that challenge the most efficient way possible, and then executing at a high level, with minimal risk, and eliminating that disaster factor as consistently as I possibly can. So I definitely have a plan going into for the next month. So I haven't even necessarily started phase 3 for me 100% just yet, looking at NC section. I've got a couple more training sessions where I have specific things that I do want to work on, as I'm starting to hit my training more heavily in live fire, as a part of that. So I'll be doing a couple more training sessions that are kind of phase 2. And then the last 3 or 4 times I'm on the range before, a major match, are either going to be shooting a local, just to kind of work that aspect of it, and I'm going to try to treat it like a major, and, induce pressure and all that kind of stuff. Or it'll be me going to the range and actually, like, setting up stages, setting up problems, looking at it, coming up with a plan, doing, full walkthroughs exactly like I would at a match, and then shooting it once, and seeing, okay, what was that execution like, and then changing it up and doing something different.
Good idea. I have not looked much into the 3 phases before this, so that was kind of a nice little breakdown of that too. And it works for some people like you and JJ, so it might work for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I try to definitely take notes from those guys that have kind of been there and done that, and I like JJ's articulation on that. The guys at PSTG basically say the exact same thing as well, in different language. But yeah, I think that's a very common trend when you ask, the top guys that have kind of been there and done that, and brung home the t-shirt. Like, what's your training looking like going into a major match? And it's not speed mode. It's not exploration. It's about consistency. And that's really, at those levels, what it's about. When you look at, Ben won nationals without winning a single stage, right? And that's, I don't want to say it's common in the sense that, like, most of your guys that win nationals will win a stage here and there, but it's not like they're winning every stage by far. It's about being top 5 on every stage, right? If you're 4th or 5th on every stage, you're probably going to win the match. Yep. Like, that's kind of how it works. So that's what it's about when you want to get good at kind of match placement. It's really about, high level of consistency of your execution, not about having, the fastest draw time or the fastest splits or whatever it is.
And have you dabbled anything into your mental game?
For sure. Yeah, I think that's huge. I don't necessarily subscribe to any one particular system in that regard. Like, I'm not like a mental management big subscriber or anything. I think that there can be advantages to those kind of systems, especially if you're somebody that, like, is self-aware enough to recognize that you're struggling with the mental aspect of the sport. And getting into that kind of a system, I think you can learn a bunch of things from that. With that said, I've never talked to JJ or Ben or like another national champion type guy and been like, hey, what's the secret to your mental game? And they're like, oh, I got to use this focus phrase. Like, I've never heard that from anybody that's like really, really good. Right. So that's an indicator to me that some of that stuff is not like necessarily the secret to the mental game, but there is a bunch of consistencies in things. For me, one of the biggest things is that I've realized about major matches, especially because they tend to be so much longer than a normal match, is conservation of energy. Like that's huge for me. I want to make sure that I am as rested as possible going into the match. I want to make sure that I basically don't do full speed walkthroughs on major matches at all anymore. I do walkthroughs, but I don't do them full speed. And I'm just conserving energy every single way that I can, so that by the end of those, 12 or 14 stages or whatever it is, I still have energy to feel like I can execute at 100% of what my kind of normal performance is. That's a big thing. The way that you visualize stages, I think, is the other really, really big thing that a lot of people that are new in the sport underestimate the value of. I think most people that get into it at all do some visualization, but maybe not enough. I've sat there and watched guys like Max Michel, visualize a stage for like 45 minutes straight, right? Very few of your BC class dudes are doing that, right? And it's like, okay, well, if he's doing that, then you probably need to do that too, bro. Like, it's not like you need it less than he does. So the ticket for me on a stage is like, what I'll say at a very basic level is before you're getting ready to shoot, if you can't sit down, close your eyes, and visualize where every single target is on the stage and like how the arrays are laid out, and know like what level of sight confirmation you're using on every target and what kind of trigger press is going to be required on every target, and like know exactly what footwork you're thinking about using, then you haven't visualized too much. Like, there's still planning that can be done there. And I think when you do visualize it to that level, that's where a huge amount of confidence comes from, because you approach the stage not going, okay, I got to remember to do that, I got to remember to do that. You approach the stage going like, I have got this thing down 100,000%, and now I'm kind of able to let it go and watch it happen, type deal. So I guess those are my biggest things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I definitely think that a lot of lower level shooters, even some of the mid-level shooters like B's and A's, probably need to do more visualization. Visualization, memorizing your stage is really important, I think, to do really well in the sport, at least at matches. I mean, raw shooting skills needed like for class fires, and even just shooting in general, you need to have. But if you can't remember where these targets are and how you're going to, what you need to do to see what you need to see or hit how you need to hit it, definitely is important for match performance, because no one wants to say, did you get that target? Which is interesting, is like everyone's like, did he shoot that? Like in the peanut gallery behind them is like, did he shoot that one? Because I'm not the guy who's gonna say you didn't even shoot at that. That's the RO's job. But
right.
But I think that's like, you could have a smoke and run, wonder why was it 2 seconds faster than everybody else? Well, you missed those 4 guys. You didn't even shoot at them.
Yep. Yeah, I did. I definitely did that once. I remember doing that once, very early on in my match. She might have been like second or third match or something. Just walked past a whole shooting position that had like 4 or 5 targets in there. Just totally forgot I even needed to go over there. It's like, okay, well, there went that match. But it was a learning experience for sure. Like, okay, I got to step up my game here when it comes to stage planning and visualization for sure.
When you're on the range all day for teaching a class, or even maybe shooting a major or even a local, do you have any nutritional tips for people?
Yeah. I am not necessarily the guy to talk to about nutrition. When you I am in the shape that I am, not because I am not active and because I don't work out, because I do those things, but I love to eat.
There's nothing wrong with loving to eat, sir.
So yeah, 100%. So yeah, I'm not some super healthy guy that's going to tell you like, hey, you need to be, make sure you have this well-balanced meal or whatever. I'm kind of on the JJ Racaza plan. I love having my power rings going into a match for sure at the beginning. But yeah, no, and nutrition, I think in general is an underlooked at part of it as well. Mainly just making sure that you have something giving you energy and making you not feel hungry as you're going throughout the match. I think that's a bad spot to be in. If you're shooting hungry, I don't think that's great. You just don't have the energy to be as aggressive as you normally would. So I'm definitely a big snack guy. I do one of my best things for the summer is I love fruit. So I'm big on those the peach cups that I'll get the pre-sealed like little peach cups. I'll have like 4 or 5 of those in my cooler. Going through the match, I'll just pop like 1 an hour. Good for hydration. And good getting that kind of little sugar boost going into the stages as well. I'll do the Cliff Bar brownie things. I'll do the Slim Jim and cheese stuff. I'll do a little bit of everything. But yeah, definitely considering that is key for sure.
All right. I learned this from a couple competitors. I like to get the Uncrustables. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, those are usually for children, but I mean for matches because they can just live in a cooler.
Right.
They're nice and they keep really well. But I love really cold grapes. I like grapes,
Yep.
but those are
Yep.
really good, especially if you freeze them the night before,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like an ice pack in your cooler. That's always one of my favorite things to eat. But I'm very proponent on drinking a bunch of water, even though if the prehydration is like, you got to be doing that, guys. If you're going to spend 12 to 14 hours on the range that day, like I've had a 14-hour training day in a class before, and it was a long one. And
Yeah.
fortunately, that range where we were at, no shade, unless there was a cloud. So you're like, yeah, you're getting baked all day.
Yeah, and that's pretty typical on ranges, and it's like at a certain point, like, man, you just can't drink water fast enough almost to keep up. So if you're starting the day in a deficit, you are going to be in bad shape. So yeah, absolutely prehydrating, especially like I don't struggle with that so much on matches, but for classes, like that's a massive focus for me is prehydrating the day before. Makes a world of difference.
And even on like a training day, do you see when the student starts clicking off because they're not properly nutrated and hydrated?
100%. Yeah. For sure. So that's a big focus for us. We actually generally on my local courses, we not only bring out coolers of water and so forth because the students generally don't bring enough, but I generally bring out a grill and actually like grill hot dogs and stuff out around lunchtime, make sure everybody's kind of fueled up. We do everything we can to fight that and make it the best kind of experience there as possible because yeah, my goal as an instructor is not to like smoke people or give them some kind of boot camp type experience and pound them into the dirt. My point is my goal is to make it as valuable of a learning experience as you possibly can and make sure that they're leaving with what they needed. So yeah, we do as much as we can there, but yeah, sometimes training environments can be difficult. You just kind of gotta suck it up a little bit too, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and I bet it really has a disconnect when people have to actually leave a class to go to lunch or go out and get something. It takes time away from the learning, and then you're always waiting on that one guy who gets stuck behind some jackass at like a fast food place.
There's always that one guy. Yes, there is. For sure.
And it's not the
Yep.
instructor.
No.
Exactly not. No, now, Bill,
to be honest, I feel like a lot of the conversations that happen around lunch too can be some of the best learning experiences for the students, to be honest. We have our curriculum and things that we do need to get through, and that's valuable. But a lot of those questions that come up in kind of a casual environment, over some hot dogs or whatever, can be really valuable, I think, for the students as well. So it's best not to miss out on that time if you can avoid it.
Absolutely. Now, is there any classes or besides NC section, is there any matches or classes that you personally are looking forward to taking or going to?
So I am actually looking forward here right before NC section. I'm going up to Ohio Range Day, which has been kind of an annual thing for me, which I'm looking forward to again this year. Lots of cool people that are involved in that. It's a fantastic time. This year I'm going to be training with Joe Farewell, which I'm excited about. Haven't got a chance to train with him in person yet. I think he's masterclass in USPSA, but he's really more of a 3-gun competitor. He's known as being one of the top guys in 3-gun right now. So excited to get his take on a few things. Then I'm training with Ian from Rune Nation as well. Will also be my first time in person with him. We're doing a kind of a hybrid limited signature carbine and pistol course. with him. So it's going to be pulling carbines out of bags and stuff like that, and concealed carry stuff. So super excited for both of those.
Yeah. If you didn't know, I mean, some people don't know, Joe actually competed at Rifle World Shoot a couple years ago, took
Yep.
silver. So he's more than he's a well-rounded shooter, guys. So
Yeah, for
he's out
sure.
of Florida. So
Yep.
he will eventually be coming on the show. He's accepted my invitation. So
Nice.
whenever ever his hectic life right now comes back down to normal, his unfortunately his sister had a major accident a couple weeks
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
So we're praying for her, and hopefully she makes a full recovery. But yeah, that's where he's got to be right now, which I 100% respect. So
Yeah, 100% for
but
sure.
yes, I did get one actually good question from a listener to yesterday.
Okay.
Um, it kind of goes like this: why are you a valuable instructor? Well, let me preface
Ooh.
this. The person says there's a lot of people who believe you only operators can teach me, right?
Mhm.
Now, give your answer of why you are a valuable instructor, not having, you know, being an operator, or why anyone, not everybody has to be an operator to be a teacher.
Okay. Very cool. So, it depends what you want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
What makes a good instructor is a fascinating discussion that we could do a whole podcast on for sure. Something that I put a lot of thought into, and it comes to some interesting conclusions, and still have some interesting uh, questions on it myself as well. But the bottom line is this: if you want to learn how to, um, you know, jump out of, if you want to learn skydiving, guess what? Tier 1 operators have to learn skydiving in some pretty to a very high level, right? And they become very, very skilled at that stuff. You're probably not going to look for some Navy SEAL to teach how to skydive. You're probably looking for a skydiving instructor, right? Um, the bottom line is this: the tier 1 guys are very good at a lot of things. They have to be good at a whole bunch of stuff, including shooting. A lot of them are good shooters. But that doesn't mean that, folks that are in the military, in law enforcement, whatever, are the only folks out there that do know how to shoot. There's a lot of folks out there that know how to shoot. So if you want to learn how to shoot, find somebody who can shoot at a very high level. Find somebody who can articulate how and why they do what they do. But also find somebody who can actually help other people do that. Those are very separate things. So, I've absolutely learned from people who were not as good as shooters as I was, but were students of the game and could articulate things and were good at watching shooters and figuring out how they could improve. I like to say all the time, Tiger Woods has a swing coach, right?
Mhm.
Like, I guarantee a swing coach is not a better golfer than he is. But I'm sure he is somebody that's good at watching golfers do what they do and analyzing their swing and offering advice and so forth. So, interesting kind of side note there. But point being, if you want to learn how to shoot, find folks that are good shooters. You brought up earlier that, hey, a lot of the special operations community, like, where are they learning from? They're learning from guys like JJ and Ben and Casey and a bunch of the top guys that are out there that are professional shooters who shoot for a living and compete for a living and have proven to be some of the best shooters in the world. That's who the tier 1 guys are learning from. And so if the tier 1 guys can learn how to shoot from those guys, then probably your average guy off the street can learn from those guys as well. So yeah, I'm more than happy. I stay in my lane to the best of my ability as much as I can. I generally am not out there teaching CQB and vehicle tactics and that kind of stuff. I teach people how to shoot, and that's kind of what I do, and hopefully, I like to think I do a pretty good job of it. So, yeah, that kind of bounced around all over the place, but hopefully that kind of answered the question.
Right. Yeah. It's not hard, you guys. I mean, it's one of those
Yeah.
things of it's like find somebody who can shoot. Not every, but also you got to vet people that you go to too, and that's another big thing I think in this industry. It's like, do your research, get informed on what people are teaching, and if they say they're special ops, kind of do some research, figure out what's, are they selling you the skunk the skunk weed or something? I mean,
Yeah.
One of those
Yeah.
things.
And it's hard. You can't vet instructors perfectly a lot of times.
Mhm.
I've trained with some of the biggest name, national tactical side of the house instructors in the country. I'm thinking about one guy in particular that I went and took his class. And literally this guy, the way that he runs his class, and he's like, okay, class, here's the drill that we're going to shoot. He explains the drill and he goes, all right, everybody just kind of shoot this at your own pace. And while the class is shooting, he's also shooting, like as if he's a student in the class. He shoots literally like the same round count that his students do. Um, Literally does not like watch the students shooting, doesn't offer them particular advice. He's like, okay, everybody shoot. And like when we're done, we'll go down and look at the targets and try to figure out like, who was good and who sucked and that kind of thing. And I've literally taken those classes and like I said before, like not received a single word of instruction directly from the instructor, like in over 2 days. And you're like, okay, well, what did I really get out of this? I got some drills like that he developed that I can maybe take home and work on these drills and maybe that'll be beneficial, but that's like literally it. Right. Um, it's really hard to figure out who those kind of guys are before you actually show up at the class sometimes. And
Right.
so, if you're like me, like you're probably gonna take some classes, and you're gonna go home and you're like, all right, well, that was not probably worth the money that I just dropped on this. But then you're gonna take some others and it's gonna be phenomenal. So it's kind of part of it, unfortunately. One of my biggest metrics that I used when I was starting off and that I recommend to people for vetting instructors is find instructors that are recommended by other instructors.
Mhm.
Bottom line is, guys, like, we're all kind of in the same game. We're all kind of competitors. And so if I, as an instructor, am recommending one of my competitors to you, it's because I really respect the heck out of that guy. And I think he's going to pass on a lot of value. Like there's no benefit in me recommending somebody that I don't like. So most instructors out there probably know, what they're talking about more than the average bear. And if they're recommending somebody else to you that they learned from, like that is a really, really strong sign
Mhm.
on who's going to be a competitor. When I took Jedi's class, he is giving credit to the folks that he's learned from, like Ben Steger, like Ernest Langdon, like, you can go down the list, different folks that he's learned from over the years. And I really respect that a lot. And I'm like, okay, if here's an instructor that learned from guys like Ben and Ernest and the other instructors that he talks about, well, I can probably go learn from those guys as well. And so that's immediately those guys get, added to my course list and I'm going hitting those guys up. So that's a great way to go for sure.
Definitely. And it shows how good they are, how good of a person to say, hey, you can come take another class with me, or you can go see X, Y, and Z and expand your horizons.
Yep.
Another one who I know personally who does that is Tim Heron. Tim Heron all the time will be like, go train with XYZ, he knows he can't teach everybody everything. So it's like,
Yeah.
go,
100%.
go learn other things from other people. Now, Billy, what is something that current you would like to tell past Billy about shooting?
So much. So much, right? Every time I've learned something, it's like, man, I wish I knew that so much sooner. Um, I guess one of the biggest things, I'll just throw, an example out there, would be to not spend so much time on cadence drills. Um, it's an interesting thing. So I actually think there's a lot of value in cadence drills. I actually use cadence drills in my courses because as instructors, sometimes it's very difficult to get people into speed mode. As an example, like sometimes it's very difficult to push people to shoot faster than they think they can, faster than they have before, faster than whatever their comfort mode is. And so the only way to get them to discover what that feels like is sometimes to give them a cadence and be like, I want you to shoot at this pace. Like, and so there's value to that, and it helps us teach people things. I spent, I think, way too much time though when I was first shooting, taking some of those drills I learned from instructors and like being, okay, this is the way I'm going to shoot all the time. And what that kind of resulted in for, definitely a period of my shooting was a lot of shooting the timer instead of shooting my sights. And shooting when I felt like I should be able to shoot, instead of, again, what are my sights telling me in some cases. The same thing I think goes for dry fire. Sometimes a lot of folks never shoot cadence drills in on the range, but they do shoot cadence every single time they dry fire. So what I mean by that is, if I'm taking my gun And every single time I'm doing a cadence drill, I'm squeezing drill 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like as I go through this target. Well, what is my motivation for shooting at that particular speed? What was causing my splits to match that? If I'm really in dry fire shooting my sights, well, my sights shouldn't really be moving as I'm going through dry fire. So I should just be able to essentially mash the trigger at 100% speed on every single target in dry fire. If I'm not doing that, what I'm essentially doing is guessing, hey, in real life, what would my split be like on this particular target at this distance? And then I'm copying that, right? Regardless of what my sights are telling me. So I'm almost training myself to ignore my sights and actually shoot on a metronome instead. And so if you find yourself doing that, sometimes it matches or whatever, you're like, man, I just shot and I didn't even see my sights. Like, what was that? What caused me to do that? Well, think about the way you're training. So that was definitely something that I've changed up a lot over the past, couple of years. Is a lot less focus on cadence drills and more focus on process, more focus on what my sights are telling me, different levels of sight confirmation and things like that. And instead of just being like, oh, I should be able to shoot a 15 split at this distance or whatever.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, some cadence drills, as an example, the one cadence drill that I've worked on is like maybe the Blake drill.
Yeah.
Just working on the Blake drill, just trying to get those eyes ahead of the gun a little bit, and also wow, brain fart. But anyway, get the eyes ahead of the gun and kind of making sure it's not double taps, more it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, kind of that even pace. That's kind of the only time I'll work on like a cadence per se, just because it's kind of the only thing I can find applicable to it. But definitely, I would agree in dry fire, it's if you shoot your sights, it's going to be a little bit better for you guys.
And that's what I was saying. I think the Blake drill is fantastic, right? So that's an example of where you're saying to yourself, hey, here's a result that I would like to be able to accomplish. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is like try to do the result and see if the hits are there. And if they're not, I'm going to experiment with, hey, like what do I need to do in order to get to that place, right? So you're using kind of a set cadence or a set kind of fire to kind of experiment and kind of figure out, okay, where are things that I can fix or improve on. Right. But again, like when we're actually going into match mode in our training, that's when you be able to separate those things. Exactly. And be like, okay, I'm no longer shooting just based upon like, hey, this is what I expect my split should be able to be, but I'm just based upon what my sights are telling me. Now, there is such a thing as predictive shooting, obviously, on close targets where I will be predictively guessing, kind of when my sight should come back if it's an attack target that's up close. But we have to be able to separate that and understand, okay, this is a target where I can do that versus a target at, a partial at 25 yards. Like, even if I'm guessing a slow cadence, like the cadence should not inform what I'm doing with my trigger at all. My sight should be informing what I'm doing with my trigger, on those more reactive style targets for sure.
100%. And I like to say that it's interesting because so many different instructors have so many different words and phrases, but they all kind of mean the same thing, which is interesting to hear everyone control attack, predictive reactive shooting. It's kind of like you got to figure out what you're going through and what everyone's talking about, because it's all kind of in code, but it all pretty much means the same. Shoot how you need to, shoot what you can see, and or depending on what kind of targets they are, shoot to your ability. And now my next question for you, Billy, is this is not like your sponsors, but who are some of your biggest mentors or supporters?
Okay. Yeah, I would say, we've already kind of talked about them. I would say the biggest kind of mentors or folks that I've learned from are a lot of the instructors that we've kind of mentioned already. Guys like JJ. I mean, I took JJ the first time I trained with JJ. I was already an M class shooter. I just made master class, and literally going in the first drill of the day was a simple 3-target transition drill. And then JJ was like, shoot this piece of paper twice, shoot this steel once, and shoot this paper twies. And before he said anything, he actually used me for whatever reason that day a lot as like his demo guy. He was like, get up here and shoot this, get on a baseline. He literally talked to us for like 5 minutes. And I was like, holy crap, I was doing that entirely wrong. And he said, shoot it again. And like almost cut my time in half on that transition drill. Like, again, as a masterclass shooter, like I wasn't like there yet, but I'm saying like, even at that level of a shooter, he was immediately put things into practice that dramatically impacted my shooting. And so those kind of guys are out there. And they do have a lot of wisdom to share, and that's been huge. JJ learned a ton from, again, on things like transitions and movement specifically. Ben, I learned a lot. It helped me with my articulation a lot on marksmanship fundamentals, understanding the processes behind shooting and kind of the formulas for achieving the results you want on different difficulties of targets at different distances and things like that. And that was insanely helpful. A lot of other instructors I've mentioned already throughout the years that, I've learned a ton from, but I would say those two in the recent years have definitely made the biggest impact in my shooting for sure.
Mm-hmm. And you took what? JJ's class was what, end of last year, something like
I've taken
that?
a couple. I've trained with him a couple times. So I've had a couple unique opportunities there. I trained with him in January of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I think 2019. It was a SHOT Show. He did a 1-day advanced class for basically 6 of us. So his usual like 2-day advanced class, he kind of boiled down for 6 folks and did it in 1 day there at SHOT Show. That was really, really cool. There was some really good shooters there in the class. Austin Aris was there. I think it was the youngest, the youngest COGM. Maybe the youngest, I don't know, something. He was a grandmaster at the time, really good shooter. And I think he's like 19 or 20 at this point. So pretty cool.
I have not seen a lot of shooting content out of Austin this year, unfortunately, which is sad.
Yeah, not so much. But anyway, he's a young guy, still got a lot going on. So I'm sure we'll see more from him in the future. But anyway, and I trained with him again. He did another course here in my local area. He came like a year, 6 months or a year after that and did a course in my area that I wasn't able to make it to. But a bunch of my buddies in this area who are really top level, shooters, trained with him, and he was, I guess, pretty impressed with that group. So he came back a year after that or whatever, here just a few months ago. It was right before Area 6. So yeah, earlier this year, I guess, and did a class for a bunch of us that had already taken his advanced class. It's kind of like a next level thing, which is really cool. It was a lot more phase 3 stuff. It wasn't so much like curriculum, like, okay, here's what we're going to learn how to do differently today. It was a lot of like, hey, let's set up stages, and because it was a small group again, and let's have you guys run them, and let's dive into what you guys can do better, what you can improve upon. Let's talk about stage planning and that kind of stuff. So it was a really, really cool, unique opportunity to kind of get inside JJ's head a little bit. And then we actually shot a match with him. He shot our local. There's Chris Tilley is here in our area as well. He puts on a pretty cool match. So we all shot Chris's match together with JJ, and kind of were able to talk through stage planning and stuff. So that was really cool.
Oh, I bet that was cool, especially if Tilly knew that JJ was coming. So
yeah.
And Chris Tilley is another top level GM national world competitor, guys. So
yep.
You don't hear much about Chris lately. It seems like he's kind of fallen off the radar, at least to social media. It seems like.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen much from him either. He was on Top Shot back in the day. Everybody kind of knew about him from that. And then he was doing some. JJ talks about him like he's one of the best in the world. I haven't shot with Chris that much, but yeah, I think he's definitely kind of off the kind of the national circuit a little bit here recently. I mean, he just won at Area 6. Obviously, he still performs at a super high level. But yeah, definitely, I think kind of off the big time national circuit a little bit. But yeah, he's got his own range here in the area that he runs matches at, and he's teaching a lot, doing classes and that kind of stuff. So
that's pretty cool.
Super cool to have those kind of guys here in the area for sure.
That definitely does help. That's for sure. Well, Billy, we are getting near the end of our show, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I've got a couple more questions for you until we wrap it up. But I steal this question from Jedi's podcast because it really hits home for me, and I like how he put it. And I'll give credit to him because just how he put it was good. But what are things that people can either start doing or stop doing to get better?
I love that. Yeah, Jedi has some great podcasts out there for sure, and I love that that segment. Obviously, so many different ways that you can go. Things we could talk about. I guess for competition shooters, maybe what I'll hit on is training to actually get better is a good thing you could start doing. I feel like a lot of competition shooters in the space, we fall in love with USPSA, and a lot of these guys really want to get better. But I see them shooting matches like every single weekend. And I'm like, that is not training. That's you're shooting a match. Shooting matches can absolutely help you get better. But if you're not going to the range and experimenting and trying different things and seeing what works for you and figuring out how to do certain things better, you're really not going to get better. At least you're not going to get better quickly. A lot of folks could benefit from maybe shooting a match a month and maybe 3 range trips a month, where they're working through things and doing experimentation. I steal and I talk about in my classes a lot linear progression, which is kind of a phrase that I stole from like the weightlifting world. When you're lifting weights and stuff and trying to get stronger, you get in a mindset, I think, of where, hey, every time I go to the gym, I know exactly what I lifted last time and how many reps I lifted it for, and I'm gonna see progression this time. I don't care if I add a pound. I don't care if I add a rep to what it was last time. But like, you have this idea of, hey, here's what I did last time. I'm going to see progression every single time I go to the range or the gym. And even if I'm only adding a pound at a time, like over the course of a month, now I've added, 5-10 pounds to what I was doing at the beginning of the month. And so over time you build up that skill. We got to approach shooting with the exact same kind of mentality where I'm going to the range and I'm like, okay, here's what I did with the accelerator drill last week, right? I'm going to approach this again and I'm going to figure out a way to get even better. And hopefully over the course of a range day, like my first rep is going to be, this time with these hits, and I'm going to work on that. By the time I go home, I'm beating that by some kind of a significant margin. And if you've reached the point where you don't know what to do differently, you can't figure out how to improve any further, well, that's a great cue that, hey, now I'm ready for another training class. I'm ready to learn something from somewhere else that I can go work on and take back to the range and work on. But you got to be approaching your training with that kind of mentality, both in dry fire and in live fire, like pushing yourself to get better. Too many folks are either not actually really training at all, they're not getting those range trips, and they're just shooting matches. Or when they do go to the range, it's just kind of turning money into noise, blowing holes in paper, having fun. And hey, if that's what you're about, that's what you want to do, like, hey, nothing wrong with that. Like, do you have fun with it? But if you do want to get better, change up the way you're doing training, where you're actually pushing yourself each and every time you're on the range to learn something, to explore something new about your shooting, and actually get better at what you're doing, for sure. That'd be a good thing, I think, for a lot of our competition shooters.
Absolutely. And I get to bounce off the statement of don't go shoot 4 matches a month, essentially. Well, matches not as practice, as matches will exploit and show a weakness, but then you can take back into training and be like, well, I had issues with partial targets, so I'm going to work on transitioning to partials or off of partials, or in and out of positions and whatnot. And it's like, using it as a diagnostic thing is a great idea, but not making matches your only training. I've seen some people who are like that, who are like, I'm gonna go shoot another match this weekend. I'm like, okay, well, it's kind of like the training junkies who take 4 all those classes a year, no time to work on it. It's kind of the same kind of principle, but shorter.
Matches are great. If you treat them right, they will help you get better. For the things thing you already said, number one, great assessment tool. It's great for me to look at where I am and figure out where I am as a shooter. That's extremely important right off the bat. A lot of guys that I train with that maybe are law enforcement, military, or are just civilians that take shooting seriously in their own personal life. Like, if you take shooting seriously at all and you practice at all, there's a good chance you're one of the best shooters, because very few people actually do that, right? And so if you are, let's say, on a law enforcement team and you've been shooting a lot, you're going to become the best shooter on your team pretty quickly. And it's real easy to start thinking that you're basically about as good as you can get. Like, you've kind of arrived, right? And once you have that mindset, you are 1,000% right. Like, you are about as good as you can get with that mindset. You're going to stop growing. And so when you go to a match, and you watch some 10-year-old kick your tail, that's a really beneficial mindset shift for you. You're like, okay, now there's a whole lot of room for me to grow. That's going to help you a lot. So it's a great assessment tool generally for where you are as a shooter. It's a great assessment tool for specific things you can learn to work on, like you mentioned already. And then you can learn things from shooting a match by watching good shooters, by getting good feedback, by seeing what folks are doing. You can be like, oh, wow, the way these folks are moving into position and getting their gun up sooner, that's something I need to work on. But just knowing that and understanding that is not going to change the way you shoot. Like, you're going to have to actually go to the range and work on it and come into the same position 10 times in a row before you're happy with it. The particular drill I just mentioned with JJ, like I distinctly remember after leaving the first time I trained with JJ and I learned how to do that transition drill. I came back in my first range session here on my own at my range. I did the exact same drill on the exact same six targets for 3.5 hours before I got one rep on it that I was like really happy with, right? Like, because it was so opposite to the way I had been doing things before. And sometimes it really does take that number of reps to work things through and figure things out and change the way that you do things. And so when you only get to try things once at a match, like, that's not enough to figure things out and fix things. So matches are extremely beneficial for assessment and learning, but then training has to occur, I think, outside of matches, in both in dry fire and on the range as well.
Absolutely. Boom. Now, Billy, let's get to kind of like your partnerships or your sponsorships.
Sure.
So we can pay their bills, so they can get their squeeze out of it.
Sure. Yeah, I'll definitely throw a few folks out there. The way my partnerships have kind of developed is somewhat different. I kind of have a rule that I will never entertain the idea of a sponsorship or a partnership with somebody if I'm not already using their gear and already very familiar with it. I just won't, because I don't think that's honest. The way my partnerships for the most part have actually worked out is that we do an EDC gear section in our level 1 courses, if you will, or just a gear section in general, where we talk through gear, because students always want to know about that stuff. They always have questions about it. And a lot of times after your first real training experience, you go home realizing like, hey, maybe this XD is not what I actually need, or whatever. Right. And so we have a lot of gear and stuff that we recommend and point out in our courses. And after we've done that for a while, a lot of the stuff that we recommend, I go and I try to, partner up with those companies to provide discounts and so forth to our students, and figure out a way for us to pay the bills as well. To be perfectly honest, like I said, our business model, the way we run classes for $200 a student, and we'll have, 4 or 5 instructors out there, it's not the way to make money. But we do try to figure out a way to pay the bills some other ways. So some really cool folks. I've talked about Zev already. They're a great partner of ours. They have some really cool guns. I run their pistols, I run their rifles, and I run their parts in some of my other guns, like my Glocks and stuff as well. They got some new SIG stuff, which is really cool. A lot of cool stuff from them. They're doing some grip work if you need stippling done. A lot of really cool stuff there. Their optic cut, by the way, I do think their optic cut is one of the best on the market for your Trijicon optics. And CNH Precision has just partnered with them. CNH is actually licensing the Zev optic cut from them now. So you can actually get that cut into your guns, which is pretty cool. Vertex is a great company that we work with for apparel and EDC bags, all that kind of stuff. Outdoor Dynamics we work with on ammo. Local guy John Royer, who actually is a big part of the NC section match and the Area 6 match, and putting on the best match we have here in our local area. He actually reloads that ammo and does a great job with it. Live the Creed, we work with on our medical stuff, medical kits, all that. Noise Fighters make some really cool gel earpieces for your ear pro, Neomag for pocket carrying reloads, and then Premier Body Armor. A bunch of really cool companies we work with. If you hit up our website on the partnership page, spectrain.us, we have discount codes for pretty much all those folks, which will help you save some coin and help us out a little bit as well.
And I will say, John is a phenomenal dude. John, he'll
Yes.
help anybody out. If you send him an email, he'd be like, I haven't emailed him, but from what I've got from people, he's like, he's helped me out. They've helped him out. And
Yep,
John is a good dude. He helps the Anderson tribe over there with Steve Anderson. And so Jay, I think he's sponsored Jay, even though Jay started reloading his own ammo now. But
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, John, I mean, like everybody else, you know, John's struggling with availability of components and stuff right now, as well. So now is not the best time to be hammering him looking for ammo. If he's got it, he'll put it up on the website and it'll be gone in about 5 minutes. So make sure you follow him on Instagram if you want to try to get any of his stuff. But his librarians, that 147 grain round, that's my primary match ammo that I've been running for years now, and I really really like it a lot.
Agreed. But that is awesome. Thank you, Billy, for coming on today. It's been a blast. I've learned a lot, and hopefully everyone else can come away learn a couple things for it. But Billy, where can they find you? Find Spectrain, all that social media jazz.
You can find us all over the place. Website already mentioned, spectrain.us, Instagram, spectrain_NC, YouTube, Spectrain. I still have some personal pages as well where I focus more on some performance stuff. I go by P3, which is my old company name, P3_performance on Instagram, P3 tactical on YouTube. I got some contents out there. We're trying to diversify a little bit. I had built up my former P3 Instagram page had like 14,000 followers on it. It got deleted a couple months ago by the gram. So really appreciate them for that. But so started the new P3 performance page and building it back up a little bit. But good times. So we're trying to build up pages all over the place just for kind of resiliency there, so that when we get Zuckerberg, we're still have ways to get in touch with folks. So
there you go. There you go, everybody. That's where you can find Billy. I greatly appreciate you checking this out, guys. But wrong button. There we go. I thank you once again for tuning into another episode of Manny Talks Shooting. I greatly appreciate you. If you enjoyed the content, check out the YouTube channel Manny Things. And until next time, get out and do the things, guys.